How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Blackhawks Barnburner Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Stille, in my beautiful little flamingo shirt here. Just wanted to hop in real quick before the episode actually gets underway to let you guys know a few things. First of all, the intro was supposed to be done this week, but obviously, life happens and things can't always get done like you hope. So I just kind of made this little impromptu thing while my buddy Ben works on the intro. Hopefully that'll be done for the episode 2 weeks from now, but I will let you guys know as stuff comes up. So, like I said, wasn't done, so I just hopped in real quick to add that in. I also wanted to let you guys know that I talk about the intro for a little bit at the beginning of this episode, and I'm going to do my best to cut around that, just so that I'm not talking about something that isn't happening. But so if the beginning of the episode seems a little choppy, maybe that's why, and we'll deal with it. We'll work with it as it arises. But yeah, so thank you guys all for tuning in to the Blackhawks Barnburner, and enjoy the episode. Oh boy, everybody, do we have a fun episode today. I am so excited to be going over what has happened in the past week and a half-ish since the last episode of the Blackhawks Barnburner was up. A lot has changed, although if you look at what the Blackhawks have done recently, you probably wouldn't think that, just based on their signings and whatnot. But got a few things I want to cover first before we really get into the episode, little announcements, things like that. I did say at the end of last week that there was going to be, I guess 2 weeks ago, that there was going to be an episode last week. What happened? Well, it's quite simple. I caught COVID. It probably doesn't sound too obvious now because I am pretty much over it. But I had my round 2 with COVID. Everything is fine. I came out of it fine. I honestly barely had any symptoms, but I was still exhausted, and I figured with that plus the lack of news that the Blackhawks had at that point in time, there wasn't really a reason to do an episode. So I decided to give myself a week off, and honestly, I think that makes more sense because, we're in a period of time where there's not a whole lot going on after the first few stages of free agency, so I don't think that there was really a lot that you guys missed out on by me not putting out an episode last week. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think that format though, doing twice a week, that was not correct at all. Once every 2 weeks. So if you needed more proof that I had COVID, that fog thing, it's real. I experienced it the first time. I'm definitely experiencing it now. So it should make for a pretty fun episode, right? That should be a good time. But I think I'm going to do a bi-weekly type of thing, at least until the season starts, and then we'll probably change the format up from there. And lastly, just wanted to call attention to it, because why not? If you're watching on YouTube, you probably noticed that there is a completely different background behind me than there was when I did my first episode. And as I said in that one, I was on vacation, but I am home now, and I will be home until I am going into my senior year of college this year. So I'll be moving back in September, and then the background will change again, and it'll be consistent for, almost a year. And then we're gonna be looking a little different, just for a while, because I still need to figure out where I'm living after college and all that good stuff. So a bunch of stuff still in the works right now. The background will be fluctuating, but for the offseason, this is what it's going to look like. I have 3 jerseys behind me. Although if you're watching on YouTube, you probably notice one of them is not a Blackhawks one. But I have a Jonathan Toews one to my right over here, although I guess it's left on camera. That came from, I think it was the Winter Classic, 2009 Winter Classic. I guess I'd have to double check that to make sure that what I'm saying is correct. It was around then. It's like my dad called it the Oreo jersey. So we've kind of adopted that in my family. But I got one of those. I have a Marc-Andre Fleury one on my left, or camera right, because he is my favorite goaltender of all time. And when he came to the Blackhawks, I was so excited. So obviously I had to pick up one of those jerseys. But in the middle, Phil Kessel. Why is Phil Kessel in the middle? Because Phil Kessel's the best. Like, there's really no other reason. We love Phil Kessel. He hasn't signed anywhere yet. Maybe he'll come to the Blackhawks. But as of right now, he's not on the Blackhawks, but he's not on any team. So, 1 in 32 chance he ends up on the Blackhawks right now. But nothing yet. I also got it in the Coyote style, the Kachina style. I hope I said that right. I think it's Kachina. Because that jersey is awesome. Like, even if the Coyotes, they don't have as many fans, right? And they've had a bunch of their own issues. Their jerseys, unreal. Like, just honestly, some of the best jerseys ever. So it was a no-brainer, It was either that or I guess I could have gotten... I don't want to get a Vegas one. I could have gotten a Maple Leafs one. Penguins one. So, settled with the Coyotes. No, I'm happy with it. So that's what the background's going to be looking like. I figured that's enough of the introductory stuff, though. 5 minutes of me just talking about nothing. Let's actually get into what today's episode is going to cover. And the first thing that we really need to talk about is the Blackhawks free agency that they've been having. It's quiet. It's been incredibly quiet. There has been almost nothing that they've done. And that was kind of something that we kind of figured was going to happen, because when the Blackhawks, when they made their initial moves, their trades and whatnot, it was clear that that was the team that they wanted to put together. They wanted to build it based off of veteran presence to put around Bedard and just kind of go from there. So because of that, they made a few moves, trade-wise, but then didn't do a lot in free agency. So I guess there's not really a lot to talk about when it comes to what the Blackhawks have done in free agency, but there is a little bit to talk about. So let's talk about it. There is one player that has signed with the Chicago Blackhawks so far, Ryan Donato. Now, for those of you who you didn't hear episode 1, I should reiterate that I was a San Jose Sharks fan. I am a San Jose Sharks fan, as well as a Blackhawks fan. So Donato is someone that I'm very acquainted with, because he played for us for one season. And he had 20 points in 50 games, which was pretty good, considering that the Sharks team was pretty bad. But then the Blackhawks managed to get him from the Kraken, because the Sharks didn't qualify him. He went to free agency. He joined the Kraken. And what I remember about his time on the Kraken was that he was a phenomenal shootout guy. Like, every time that there was a shootout and Ryan Donato was out there, it was almost a guarantee he was going to score a goal in the shootouts. And again, the Kraken weren't fantastic that first year. But even despite the fact that they were pretty bad, he still did relatively good for them in that period of time. So I think that was a pretty good signing for the Blackhawks. It's only a 1-year deal. No, it's a 2-year deal. Oh, excuse me. It's actually a 2-year deal with the Blackhawks. And I think that he's a player that, he's been on a decent number of teams so far. So it makes sense that, he wasn't finding a long-term home anywhere. So the Blackhawks decided to take a chance on him. He's someone that can probably play on the 3rd or 4th line. And I think that was just a good move in general. I think that adding someone like Donato, it's just a good player to fill out the roster. He's only getting paid $2 million for those 2 years. And he's consistently, he's consistently around 31 points. Like the 20 to 30 point range. So, if you put him in your 3rd line, maybe, that's just a good spot to have him. He's not incredibly old. He's only 27. So I think that it was a decent signing by the Blackhawks, but that was it. That was the only roster signing that they've had. They've had a few like AHL level signings, but most of those are Rockford Ice Hogs contained. Like, they're not moves that the Blackhawks did as well. So like Josh Maniscalco, the day I'm filming this, signed with the Ice Hogs, which I watched him play in juniors for the Dubuque Fighting Saints, and he was really good. He was very, very good for the Fighting Saints. So I don't think he'll get an NHL contract. I'm guessing he'll probably spend the majority of his time in the AHL or the ECHL. But if he did get an NHL, look, I don't think I would be opposed to that. He is decent. I wouldn't say that he is someone who projects to be like a NHLer, really. Maybe fringe NHLer, but yeah. So like I said, Donato, the only real signing that's been made by the Blackhawks so far. So free agency's been pretty quiet. Now that being said, there is a decent amount going on behind the scenes, it seems like, with some potential trades and stuff like that. But nothing's really come to fruition so far. Kyle Davidson's been, like I said, he's been pretty quiet since the draft ended. But just looking on Cap Friendly, the Blackhawks currently have about 17 mil in cap space, which does hit the floor. But I wouldn't be surprised if they try to weaponize their cap space a little bit. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'd have to look to see like what bad contracts there are, just in general throughout the league. But I'm guessing that they'll probably use a bit of that cap space that they have to just try and get maybe a few more draft picks. I thought about something that I like kind of mulled over in my head is the idea of adding Matt Murray from the Maple Leafs. And just taking that contract on for, kind of like what we did with Mrazek. We just become salary dump partners with the Maple Leafs. But from what I've heard about Matt Murray, it sounds like he's probably just going to be an LTIR guy. So I'm guessing that he won't be moved anywhere. Or if he does, like I said, it'll be like a cap dump type thing. But I'm guessing they'll just toss him on LTIR. Or maybe he'll be able to play, but it didn't sound very good for that. So anyways, yeah. So the Blackhawks, they've used 17 mil of their cap space. We actually have, if you just look at the draft picks we have coming up, we've got a decent amount. And I'm actually kind of surprised that we don't have a first and 26 with the way Davidson's been handling just all of the trades so far. Sorry, had to make a quick cut. Like I said, still recovering from COVID. Oh boy, just had like a nice old coughing fit right there. It was pretty fun. Anyways, yeah. So I'm kind of surprised that the Blackhawks don't have more first round picks for upcoming years. I'm guessing we'll be able to flip players like Taylor Hall maybe. I don't think Nick Foligno will get you a first. And again, Taylor Hall probably only gets you a first if you get his career rejuvenated. Maybe playing alongside Bedard, that happens, which would be awesome. And then you could probably flip him for a first. But the upcoming draft isn't especially deep. So I don't know how many firsts you want to add. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna just because we can, right? Just because we can. Let's take a way too early look at the 2024 entry draft, guys. Let's see what do we got as far as who's projected to go where. Is this a Elite Prospects when they normally have their rankings like this? Yeah, okay. So they have top prospects listed, but they don't have them ranked. Is there a mock draft that we can look at? What about... All right, yeah. So let's take a look at the Athletics. That's probably a good place to look if you're looking at a mock draft. But yeah. So it depends on what Davidson ends up deciding that he wants to do. But so obviously Macklin Celebrini, it's someone that been talked about for a while. Actually, at least like the past 2 years. And kind of as they say here, he doesn't profile in the Connor Bedard, McDavid, or Crosby echelon. And, of course, he was a Chicago Stille. As someone who grew up watching USHL, living in that area, the Stille are just kind of unreal at developing players. I mean, they've had... Fantilli was there. Celebrini's there. They had Owen Power as well. Like, it's so weird. Honestly, at this rate, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Gavin McKenna came down and started playing with the Chicago Steel. So Celebrini's your projected first round pick or first overall pick. You're probably not getting a draft pick that moves that high because I'm pretty sure. Actually, I'm gonna go back and look, but I am pretty sure that Okay, yeah, it is a top 10 protected pick. And I'm guessing, is the Maple Leafs top 10 as well? Okay, so they're both top 10 protected. So you're not going to be able to get Celebrini with either of them. I doubt that there's any chance either of those teams are that bad anyway. But so you got Celebrini. Cole Yzerman is listed as the second. So a lot of NTDP USHL guys projected, at least in the top three. Yeah, there, Green Bay Gamblers, Artem Lashunov. That is another USHL one. So another USHL heavy draft, kind of like the year that Jack Hughes went first overall. Ivan Demidov. Kiwi Haru was supposed to be the guy that went first overall. A while ago, he was projected that, but it didn't end up looking like it was going to pan out that way. And I think he just took a step back, I think. Just didn't play as well as he was expected to. But I'm guessing that he will be maybe top 10. But I guess we'll see. So, point being, you're not going to get any of these guys with those picks. You're maybe looking at, I would say the lowest 15 is probably the lowest. If the Lightning miss the playoffs, they're going to miss it only by a little bit. So you're looking at guys like Cole Hudson, Adam Jiricek, which I'm pretty sure is David Jiricek's brother. Younger brother of top prospect David. So I'm almost 100% sure that David Jiricek was the player that the Blue Jackets selected with the draft pick that we sent them in the Seth Jones trade. So I don't know. That doesn't really make up for it, but something like that could be interesting. So any of these guys here, that's who you're probably looking at, Alexander Zetterberg range. With those picks, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add a little bit more come draft day. I don't really think that the Blackhawks are going to be able to get a first-round pick out of any of the guys they currently have, unless, like I said, unless they just explode, or you get your next, player that kind of didn't look like he was going to project in anything and then just explodes. It's happened in the past. Could happen again. You think of like Brandon Hagel, which got us those first-round picks. But I don't know if the Lightning teams might be a little hesitant on it now because of the Tanner Jeannot trade and everything that happened there. So I don't know. It's up in the air on whether or not you'll get a player in that draft range if you're able to add another pick. But anyway, so sorry, that was that was completely off topic. What I really wanted to look at was what the cap situation is going to look like in the upcoming years. So obviously the forward we're paying the most to right now is Taylor Hall, which we acquired via trade. And we signed Nick Foligno and Corey Perry both to $4 million deals, only for the 1 year. Again, just to kind of hit the cap floor. I don't see either of them being someone you're able to trade and get like a high pick back. Like if you retain half of it, you're maybe getting like a third, maybe somewhere in that range. But yeah, so that's kind of what you're looking at as far as who you're paying your forward. Seth Jones, like, oh boy. I'm just looking at that deal. We've got 29-30 is when that deal ends. So he's actually the only player. He's the only player that we have signed for more than 2 years. Is that true? No, 3 years. Murphy's got 3 years on him. Wow. So Seth Jones, I think if you kind of look at what's happening with Erik Karlsson right now, I heavily doubt that you are going to get anything for Seth Jones. Like even with Erik Karlsson, at the time I'm recording this, there hasn't been a trade that's happened yet. But when that trade does happen, I don't think that you're going to see a super huge return. I don't think you're going to see multiple firsts, multiple good prospects. The two teams, according to Elliot Friedman, that are leading right now are the Hurricanes and the Penguins. And I don't think either one of them is going to give up something massive, unless the Penguins are just really trying to make another run for Crosby and Letang and those guys. Then maybe the Sharks get Brayden Yager out of it. But yeah, so it's hard to imagine that the Blackhawks are able to get anything for Seth Jones, even if they're able to find a way to trade him, which is again even like a massive question. And honestly, at this rate, why trade Seth Jones, right? It doesn't really make much sense. The team isn't very good. Just hang on to him until you need to dump that cap space, especially if the cap goes up like it's been projected to. If the cap does go up, then there you go. Then the Seth Jones probably is looking a little bit better on that deal. I should also mention I was talking about Seth Jones being the only player extended longer than 3 years. That will, at the end of those 3 years, when Connor Murphy's deal is done, is when Connor Bedard's entry level is going to expire, which he hasn't actually been signed yet. But it's kind of a no-brainer he will be. But that's when his entry-level deal will be up, and then you got to pay him the big bucks. So it's probably a good thing that you really only have Seth Jones from that point on. I feel like it gives you a little bit more flexibility with what you want to do with Bedard. And we'll have more players, I'm guessing, in those 3 years. So, but that's what the forwards are looking like. And again, defensemen only have 4 listed on here right now. So I don't know what the Blackhawks are going to do defensively. I think they'll just bring up some of their young guys. Maybe they'll sign some people. And then for goalies, they're going to run Mrazek and Soderblom. I think that's always been the plan. Unless, like I said, unless they bring in Matt Murray or something like that. But and then we also have some dead cap from retaining on McCabe. And then the recapture penalty for Duncan Keith's retirement. Almost $2 million. So... And then, we have another $4 million dead from buyouts. Brett Connolly's buyout finally ends this year. So, cap space is looking decent for the Blackhawks. We have lots of it. We could be weaponizing it, like I said. I don't really know what the market is for weaponizing that cap space. So we'll have to see what Kyle Davidson is able to pull off. And I'm sure, with what he's done so far, I completely trust him. I think the Blackhawks fans would be stupid not to trust the process that Davidson has set up so far. He's been absolutely phenomenal as the general manager for this team. And there's no reason to think that Kyle Davidson isn't capable of running the Chicago Blackhawks and figuring out what he wants to do with this team. I think it makes perfect sense that he will be adding as the offseason goes on to just build a team that can not only help Bedard, but it'll probably keep the Blackhawks in the basement. And then we can take another run at a top prospect. Again, next year's draft isn't going to be as good as this year's was, but who cares? You just got Connor Bedard. There's literally no reason to complain about the quality of the draft class. So, again, just trust Davidson, trust the process. They'll figure it out. But with all that cap space, there is the question of, are the Blackhawks going to be adding anyone else that's listed as a free agent right now? And there's a surprising amount of people that are still available. You probably wouldn't think that they're still here. But there is a decent amount. So obviously the top 2 that are still there, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews. Toews, we let go. We said we weren't going to bring him back. The question was raised about whether Kane was going to return to the Blackhawks, and he made it pretty clear that he wasn't going to. I think the only argument you can make that Kane should come back to the Blackhawks is literally just Bedard. And maybe that's a good enough reason for him to come back. I don't think it's a good enough reason. I think he wants to win another cup. So the only way I could see him coming back to the Blackhawks is if he's planning on retiring the next year, which I don't think Patrick Kane is going to be retiring after next year. Maybe he will be. I could see Toews retiring, honestly, this year. But Kane, I'm not so sure about that. There's also been reports that Matthew Dumba is looking at going to the Arizona Coyotes, or at least there's some interest there from the Coyotes. So, I was talking about the Blackhawks issues that they're having on defense right now. They don't really have that many defensemen. I wouldn't expect Dumba to be one of the guys that they bring in. I think Dumba, if he actually does go to the Coyotes, which, first of all, that means the Coyotes are trying to be out of the basement. That's impressive. It wasn't that long ago that I thought that the Coyotes were basically doomed to an eternal rebuild. But they actually have a pretty good prospect pool. So if Dumba goes there, I think it makes sense, but I think it'd be interesting to watch the Coyotes. But even so, I don't think the Blackhawks are going to take a run at Dumba. I think if you look at any of these guys, which Hornqvist just retired, so he probably shouldn't even be on this list. Also, wait, Jonathan Quick is on this list. And I could have sworn that Jonathan Quick signed already. I'm almost 100% sure that he signed already. So that's incorrect. Oh well. I hope that the rest of this list is right. But so this is actually what I wanted to look at. So rather than taking a look at the UFAs, I want to take a look at the RFAs, because I think that there is a very realistic argument for trying to get some of the RFAs that are available still. I think that there are plenty of RFAs that the Blackhawks could make an offer sheet on. And one player I actually talked about in a tweet earlier this week was the idea of trying to offer sheet Alexis Lafreniere. Now, there is one massive issue with the idea of offer sheeting Lafreniere, and it is just the fact that there is zero possible way the Rangers don't match. There is zero way that the Rangers do not attempt to match on Lafreniere. I think we would be kidding ourselves if we said that there's a chance Lafreniere becomes a Blackhawk. But that being said, I think there is an argument to be made that Lafreniere maybe needs a change of scenery, because the years that he had with the Rangers haven't been phenomenal. He's had some down years with the Rangers, and I think that the Blackhawks could be able to bring the best out of him, potentially playing alongside of Bedard. If you think about the fact that he's a left-wing playmaker type of player, Bedard is your goal scorer. If you get Lafreniere playing with Bedard, your team would just look unreal. But so as you can see, he had 39 points this year, 31 the year before that, and 21 the year before that. He really has not broken into look at this. He had 112 points in 52 games in the QMJ. Like, clearly, you don't do that unless you're incredibly talented. And something else that I noticed is that, his goal scoring is actually about where you'd expect it to be. It maybe should be picking up a little bit more, but his assists are nowhere near what they were in the QMJ. So I wonder if you get him playing alongside someone who scores a lot, if he can feed it to him, that could probably help his numbers quite a bit. And obviously some of it is just deployment. The Rangers are notoriously bad at deploying their young guys. So it's not that surprising to think that Lafreniere is having issues because they're just not playing him well. So if the Rangers are obviously going to bring him back, he is a free agent right now. But what type of deal are you looking at with Lafreniere? I'm guessing 1 or 2 years at $1 million or something like that, right? Not a big raise, if a raise at all. Which he probably deserves to be getting paid at least $1 million. He's still putting up 39 points in 81 games, which is obviously still, NHL worthy, but not first overall pick. So I bring up the idea of offer sheeting him because I think that there's this big discourse in the NHL about offer sheeting players. If you think about what happened with Kotkaniemi, with the Hurricanes, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong here, but I think that they offered Kotkaniemi a deal that ended in 20 because that was Sebastian Aho's number. That's just, it's something incredibly petty, right? But it makes me wonder if teams, when you offer sheet one of their players, if they start getting, not aggressive, but they don't like it at all. And they want to try to, get back at you kind of for it. So, I think the idea of offer sheeting Lafreniere could be interesting if you're willing to tarnish your relationship with the Rangers, which I don't know if they're willing to do that, but I think it could be something interesting they could do. So obviously Lafreniere's probably the number one RFA guy you'd really look at if you were considering offer sheeting someone. But if you just look at the other guys that are listed here, there are some of them that I think could make sense trying to offer sheet. Like, maybe Evan Bouchard. Again, same type of thing. I don't think you're ever getting that to go through. That's probably it, though. A lot of the players that are remaining are ones that look like they're really going to think about where they're signing. Or may not sign till the beginning of the season. So it's hard to tell if the Blackhawks will make a move on any of the UFAs. I think taking a look at the RFAs could be something interesting that they could do. I don't know if they'll do it. They probably won't do it. But if they did, I think it could be cool. So there is one RFA that recently was moved that I really want to talk about. And that is Alex Debrincat. And I'm sure that Blackhawks fans have heard plenty enough about Alex Debrincat already, but I think it's worth talking about because if you're a Blackhawks fan who believes that we lost the Alex Debrincat trade in any capacity, I don't know that you have any. I don't think you have any reason to think that anymore. I think that there is a 0% chance that the Blackhawks lost the Debrincat trade, seeing what the Senators got back in the same player movement. So the trade as it stands was Debrincat for Dominic Kubalik, Donovan Sabrango, who actually is a Ottawa-born kid, which is really interesting. A first from Detroit that could be Boston's. That the condition there is that the Red Wings get to choose which one they want to send. So it'll be the lower one, obviously, and that will probably be Boston's, and then a fourth. The odds that first round pick is not like in the 20 range is so incredibly low. There is no way that pick ends up being higher than like 17. So just to kind of put it into perspective, I'm pulling this back up. Let's look at this again. The Blackhawks got the 7th overall pick, the 39th overall pick, and a third for next year for Debrincat. Those two picks that we've used already turned into Kevin Korchinski, who is our number one defensive prospect by a long shot, and is probably third or fourth behind Bedard and Reichel for prospect quality, right? Kind of in the same range as like Nazar and Oliver Moore from this year. And Paul Ludwinski, who looks to be really good, and probably is like, a middle six, bottom six type of guy. And then we still have a third that we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. And that's what we got for Debrincat. And at the time, it was like a disappointing haul, right? Like, I'd be lying if I said that was exciting when that trade initially went down. But, I mean, look at what the Senators got. They got nothing for Debrincat. The best player they got was Kubalik, who, when he was a Blackhawk, managed to get nominated for the Calder, and, was really good for the Blackhawks, but then kind of stagnated. Like, he never really broke past what he was in that year that he was a Calder nominee. So, I think that the Senators got a good player in Kubalik, right? Like, look at his stats. 45 points in 81 games, 20 goals last year. That's really good. Those stats are phenomenal. For at least what is he getting paid? He's getting paid like, $2.5 million. That's really good for a player of that quality. But, I mean, if you look at his age, he's 27 right now. He's in his prime. He's going to be declining. And there's no guarantee that the Senators are able to keep him. So, I mean, he's no Debrincat. Debrincat can pop 50 in a season. Kubalik's getting 30 less. And granted, he's not like the main piece in this deal, right? And he's not a cap dump either. He's a decent player. But the main piece is that first round pick, which isn't going to be a phenomenal pick. And when you think about what the Blackhawks got, I mean, we got Kevin Korchinski out of that who this year was absolutely unreal with the Thunderbirds. Like, it's so hard to think that the Senators are going to be able to match that. And it kind of got me thinking that I think the Senators have kind of always made less than stellar trades under Dorian. I think that the one you can look at that was a absolute steal was the Karlsson trade. Obviously, they won the Karlsson trade. But other than that, I just, like, I'm starting to really wonder what the Senators are doing. And, you know, I thought Debrincat was going to be someone they were going to keep long term, and he didn't want to stay. He wanted to be closer to his family. He wanted to be back in the States. So, you know, what are you going to do? That's just part of the business, right? Sometimes players are going to want to leave. But I don't know. It's just such an underwhelming return that I can't help but feel so much better about the Debrincat trade in hindsight. Because I don't think that there's any conceivable way that the Blackhawks lost that trade now. Obviously, it's easy to go back and say that. But we'll have to see what that first round pick turns into. That is the only saving grace of this trade, is that first round pick could be a steal. There are plenty of players that get drafted mid to late first round that turn into really good NHL players. So it's just something that we'll have to see. But I mean, like I said, the Senators didn't have a first round pick in one of the deepest drafts in recent memory, but then now have two for a weaker draft the year after. So make of it what you will. I think it's tragic that Alex Debrincat is now playing for one of the biggest rivals of the Blackhawks. But obviously, you know, it's a feel-good story. Debrincat grew up in Michigan, so he's back home, and I think that he could fit in really well with what the Red Wings are building there, with the Yzer plan and all that. But man, it's one of those trades that you can't help but feel good for the Blackhawks, because that could have been what we got. And we traded him, we sold at the right time, and we got something good out of it. And I think Korchinski is going to be phenomenal for us in the future. But he hasn't played an NHL game yet, so, you know, who knows? I think he'll get a shot this year. But, yeah, just massive blunder by the Senators, for sure. So, with that, I think we're going to call it for this week. So, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Blackhawks Barnburner. I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm glad that I'm home and that I have, you know, an actual place to do this now instead of on vacation. Hopefully I'm over COVID full time in the next coming days, so I can not talk for 30-some minutes and feel like my throat's about to give out. I need to go drink a shit ton of water, so I'm going to go start that process. But thank you guys all for tuning in as always, and we will see you in the coming weeks with more Blackhawks news. Make sure to check in on our Twitter at BlackhawksBB. We also are on Threads now, so you can find us on Threads, Blackhawks Barnburner. And tweet us any questions you guys might have. Make sure to follow our socials, and we'll see you later.